Hello all, vi alle millam to Muniba-mazari-inspiration. Let me begin by asking you something simple, yet deeply uncomfortable. What is your time worth to you? Not in a financial sense, not as a wage or a billable hour, but in terms of value, purpose, and meaning. Because how you answer that question will quietly define the quality of your life. Time is the most underestimated, most misunderstood currency we have. And yet, we trade it every single day, often for things that don't nourish us, don't build us, and don't reflect who we truly are. We give it away thoughtlessly, as if it's infinite. But it isn't. You see, most of us live as if we'll live forever. We delay dreams. We postpone healing. We keep telling ourselves, not now, and assume that later is a promise life has made to us. But life never promised us later. That's a belief we invented, a convenient story we tell ourselves to escape discomfort, to stay safe, and sometimes to avoid responsibility. But time is not promised. And here's where I want you to pause with me. Just breathe and reflect. Every minute that passes is one you will never get back. You will never be this exact age again. You will never be in this exact moment again. And yet, we move through life as if we're rehearsing for something more real than this. As if the real part of our life is coming tomorrow. But this is it. This moment is not a rehearsal. It is the performance. Philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, great minds of the Stoic tradition, wrote about this centuries ago. They meditated on mortality, not to be morbid, but to sharpen their awareness. They believed that remembering the limits of our time makes us live better, not worse. That when we confront how little time we truly have, we stop squandering it on things that are hollow and start aligning ourselves with what actually matters. And what is it that matters? That depends on you. But what I know for sure is this: it is not the time you have that defines you. It's what you do with it. You can have a long life filled with distraction or a short life filled with purpose. Which one would you rather choose? Psychologically, there's something very human about procrastination. We all do it. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure, to avoid discomfort, and to preserve energy. But when those instincts go unchecked, they begin to run the show. We spend our days drifting, scrolling, numbing ourselves from our own potential, not because we are lazy, but because we're afraid of judgment, afraid that if we try, we might discover we're not enough. But here's the truth: wasting time is not just about losing hours, it's about losing parts of yourself. Every time you avoid the work, avoid the conversation, avoid the growth, you lose a piece of the person you could have become. You silence your own becoming. And for what? A moment of comfort, a temporary escape. There is nothing more painful than looking back and realizing that you were the one who kept holding yourself back. We romanticize the idea of having more time. We say, if only I had more time, I would write that book, I would start that business, I would fix that relationship, I would take better care of myself. But let me challenge that. It's not about having more time. It's about being more honest with the time you already have. Time doesn't need to be managed. It needs to be respected. We must begin to treat time as sacred, because it is. It is your life's most precious gift and the most fragile. And if you wait for the right mood, the right season, the perfect version of yourself to show up before you begin, you will wait forever. So how do we stop wasting time? We begin by waking up. We begin by becoming brutally honest about where our time goes, what we're giving our attention to, and what we're avoiding. We begin by asking the hard questions. What am I doing today that is pulling me closer to the person I want to become? And more importantly, what am I doing that is pulling me further away? This isn't about guilt. It's not about shaming ourselves for the time we've lost. It's about choosing differently now, choosing to live with presence, choosing to live with urgency. Not a rushed, anxious urgency, but a meaningful one. Also an urgency that says, I understand the value of my life. I respect it enough not to waste it anymore. There is a quiet power in taking ownership of your time, because once you do, you begin to take ownership of your life. And when you do that, you become unstoppable. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you finally understand what's at stake. So let me leave you with this. Let's talk about honesty, not the kind we extend to others, but the kind we owe to ourselves. Because if we truly want to stop wasting time, we must begin with this question: where is my time actually going? It sounds simple, almost obvious, but the answer is rarely clear because most of the ways we waste time don't scream for our attention. They whisper. They hide behind habits we've normalized, and before we know it, entire days, weeks, even years, slip by, not because we made one big mistake, but because we didn't notice the 1,000 tiny ones. We often think of time wasting in extreme terms: binge, watching television for hours, of endlessly scrolling social media, or sleeping until noon every day. But time is just as easily lost in subtle ways. Overthinking decisions that don't matter, of saying yes when we should say no, spending energy on people who drain us, and constantly postponing what we know in our hearts we should be doing. These aren't just distractions, they are escape routes. We use them to avoid discomfort, to avoid responsibility, to avoid the fear that maybe we are not yet who we hoped we'd be. And so we get busy, not productive, just busy. Because busyness gives the illusion of progress without requiring real vulnerability. But the problem with distraction is that it doesn't just cost us time. It costs us clarity. It clouds our judgment. It numbs our intuition. And the more distracted we become, the more disconnected we are from ourselves, from our goals, from our purpose. Psychologically, this makes sense. Our brains crave stimulation. They seek dopamine. And in a world engineered to keep us clicking, liking, reacting, we don't stand a chance unless we become intentional, unless we begin to design our time instead of letting the world design it for us. And here's where it gets deeper. Wasting time is not always about doing the wrong things. Sometimes it's about doing the right things at the wrong time. Spending 3 hours answering emails when your creative energy is highest in the morning, having deep conversations late at night when your mind is exhausted, or endlessly refining the plan when what's needed is action. So, what do we do with this? We begin by noticing. Awareness is the first step to reclaiming your time. Start by paying attention, not just to how you spend your hours, but why. Why do you keep checking your phone? Why do you keep delaying that project? Why do you always feel too tired to begin? The answers will surprise you. They might even discomfort you, but they will also free you. Because when you become aware of your patterns, you gain the power to change them. And I want to emphasize this. Changing your relationship with time doesn't require some dramatic life overhaul. It starts with small acts of attention. Asking yourself, is this helping me grow? Before committing to anything, noticing when you're avoiding something important and choosing to face it instead. Creating quiet space in your day, not to do more, but to think more clearly. Time, you see, is not always stolen from us. Sometimes we give it away voluntarily, to things that do not serve us. We say yes to obligations that leave us empty. We give hours to arguments that don't lead to peace. We pour energy into proving ourselves to people who were never meant to understand us. And we call this normal. But it's not normal. It's costly. We need to start recognizing the difference between what is urgent and what is important. Not everything that demands your attention deserves it. Not every opportunity is meant for you. And not every voice needs a response. Learning to protect your time is not selfish. It is essential. Because when you protect your time, you protect your focus. And when you protect your focus, you protect your future. But let me also say this. Do not confuse being busy with being valuable. You are not your output. You are not your to-do list. Your worth is not measured by how many things you've checked off. True value comes from alignment, when your actions match your purpose. And you cannot align yourself if you're constantly distracted. So, if you're serious about changing your life, don't start with a vision board or a 5-year plan. Start by looking at how you spend your average day. Because your days, strung together, are your life. And if you're losing your days to distraction, then you're not just wasting time, you're slowly drifting away from the person you were meant to become. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What am I afraid of facing? And then, more courageously, what would happen if I finally stopped running from it? Because maybe the most dangerous form of time wasting isn't the scrolling or the multitasking. Maybe it's the habit of convincing yourself that you're not ready, that the perfect moment is still somewhere out there, that you need more time. But you don't need more time. You need more truth, more awareness, more courage. And so I leave you with this before you say you don't have time. Make sure you're not just giving it away. If we've already accepted that time is limited, and we've begun to identify where it's being lost, then the next step becomes inevitable. We must decide where that time should go. And that decision begins with knowing what actually matters to you. I'm not talking about the things you say matter, the things you mention in passing or post about on social media. I mean the things that truly sit at the center of your being. The things that, when stripped of expectation, noise, and fear, remain non-negotiable. Here's the uncomfortable truth: most people don't waste time because they're lazy. They waste time because they're unclear. Unclear about who they are, unclear about where they're going, unclear about what deserves their energy. And when you're unclear, everything looks important. Every invitation feels urgent. Every task feels necessary. You move through your day reacting to life instead of choosing how to live it. That's why setting clear priorities isn't about being more organized. It's about being more aligned. Because once you decide what matters, you can stop living by default. You can stop being pulled in every direction. You can stop saying yes just to please people. And you can begin to say yes to what feeds your soul, not just what fills your schedule. But let's not romanticize this. Clarity is hard. It requires you to look inward with honesty. It asks you to untangle your desires from your distractions. And sometimes, it even asks you to let go of dreams that no longer belong to you. You see, we are constantly being shaped by our culture, our families, our fears. We're told to chase certain milestones, the job title, the relationship, the approval, the applause. And for a while we do. But eventually, many of us arrive at a point where we're doing everything right, yet feeling everything wrong. We're successful, but not satisfied. Busy, but not fulfilled. Why? Because we've been chasing someone else's idea of meaning. Psychologically, this creates a kind of quiet inner conflict, a misalignment between our outer life and our inner truth. And when that misalignment grows, so does our anxiety, so does our restlessness. We begin to feel like something is missing, even if we can't quite name it. And we start looking for it in all the wrong places, in more work, more noise, more distractions. But what's missing is often not something. It's a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. And purpose isn't a grand, singular moment of awakening. It's not something you stumble upon accidentally. It's something you choose daily. It begins by asking again and again, what do I value most? What am I building? And what am I willing to walk away from so I can walk fully toward that? There is power in deciding what matters. Because once you do, everything else becomes negotiable. You stop needing to be everywhere. You stop chasing every opportunity. You begin to live with intention. You begin to protect your energy. You begin to choose less, but with more conviction. It's important to say here that priorities don't just guide what you do. They also guide what you don't do. When you're clear on your path, you stop being afraid to miss out. Because the fear of missing out is only powerful when you don't know what you're saying yes to. Let's ground this in something practical. You don't need to have a 5-year plan. But you do need to know what you're committed to this year. What are you working toward? What are you willing to be disciplined for even when motivation disappears? What do you want to be able to say you gave your time, your focus, your energy to? Because the truth is, if you don't set your priorities, someone else will. If you don't define your values, the world will hand you theirs off. And if you don't know where you're going, every distraction will look like an opportunity. This is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about choosing not to live your life on autopilot, not to wake up years from now with regret, wondering why you never started the things that truly mattered. So let me ask you now, and I hope you ask yourself this often, without judgment, but with curiosity, is how I'm living aligned with what I say I want? And if the answer is no, what are you willing to change? Because time is too precious to keep giving to things that don't move you forward. And clarity is too powerful to keep postponing. You don't have to do everything. You just have to do what matters most, and do it with your whole heart. Because in the end, it's not how much you've done that will define you. It's whether what you've done was worth doing. We've spoken about time, how precious it is, how often we waste it, and how clarity of purpose gives it direction. But even with all of that awareness, something still stands in the way for many of us. It's not a lack of information. It's not a lack of talent or even opportunity. It's something far quieter, far more insidious, waiting for the perfect moment to begin. You've probably said it before, or at least thought it. I'll start when I feel ready. Or, let me just figure things out first. And it sounds reasonable, even responsible. But let me tell you this. Waiting for the perfect moment is one of the most sophisticated ways we waste time. There is no perfect moment. There is no version of the future where everything will align exactly as you imagined it would. Life doesn't operate like that. And deep down, you already know this. You've already lived enough to know that clarity doesn't come before action. It comes through action. Confidence doesn't show up before you take the first step. It grows because you did. But we convince ourselves otherwise, don't we? We delay, we plan, we prepare, and somewhere in that process, we make the mistake of thinking that we're progressing. But there's a difference between motion and movement. One makes you feel busy. The other moves you forward. If you're always preparing and never beginning, then what you're doing is standing still with elegant excuses. Why do we do this? Psychologically, it makes sense. The human brain is designed to avoid pain, and starting, really starting, means confronting discomfort. It means facing uncertainty, risking failure, exposing ourselves to judgment. So instead, we keep tweaking the plan, adjusting the timing of waiting until we're the right mindset. But that mindset we're waiting for, it's forged in the doing, not in the waiting. And here's something that might shift your perspective. Taking imperfect action is not a sign of being unprepared. It's a sign of being alive. Nothing meaningful in life ever starts fully formed. Nothing beautiful ever arrives without first being rough around the edges. The most powerful ideas of the strongest people, the deepest breakthroughs, they are all born in the middle of mess and movement, not in stillness. We must learn to respect momentum over perfection. That's how growth happens. That's how clarity is built. You act, you stumble, you reflect, you adjust. Then you act again, and with each small, consistent step, you begin to trust yourself more, not because you're perfect, but because you've proven that you can keep going even when things aren't perfect. And isn't that the kind of life we want? Not one where we wait on the sidelines hoping to be fully ready, but one where we step into the field unsure, trembling maybe, but still moving forward. We think that once we have more time, we'll start. Once we feel more confident, we'll speak. Once we have it all figured out, we'll commit. But the truth is, it's the doing that creates the knowing. You will never feel fully ready. You will never have absolute certainty, and you don't need to. What you need is the courage to take the next right step, however small, however clumsy. Because the longer you wait, the heavier the weight of inaction becomes. The longer you delay, the more intimidating the start begins to feel. This is where philosophy meets psychology. The Stoics teach us that right action is the cure to doubt, that the only thing truly in our control is our response, our choice to act in this moment regardless of how we feel, not recklessly, not without thought, but with the understanding that forward motion, however slow, always beats standing still. Let me say something clearly you don't need to have everything together to begin. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be perfect. You simply need to be willing. Willing to start before you're ready. Willing to fail before you succeed. Willing to act in the face of uncertainty, because your growth matters more than your comfort. And you'll find that when you act, even in small ways, you shift something internally. You start to build integrity with yourself. You no longer just think about who you want to be. You start to become that person through action. It's subtle, but powerful. You begin to trust yourself not because things always go right, but because you know you won't give up when they go wrong. So, ask yourself this today. What is one thing I've been postponing because I don't feel ready? And more importantly, what could change if I just began? Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient, of now. Because life doesn't reward those who wait the longest. It rewards those who are bold enough to begin without guarantees. You don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going.